Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to Basic Rights Oregon's Trans Day of Visibility Queer Town Hall. My name's Kyran Chase, and I have the genuine honor of supporting Basic Rights Oregon as a community organizer and advocate focused on transgender justice work. In the 4 years that I've been a part of this team, I have gotten to know hundreds of trans people, maybe thousands of trans people. And today I'm really excited to introduce you to a few of my favorite wonderful trans folks. Tomorrow is Transgender Day of Visibility. So this is an annual opportunity to commemorate, excuse me, I did not silence. Taking care of that now. This is, there we go, okay. So tomorrow is Transgender Day of Visibility, which is an annual opportunity to commemorate both the discrimination that is faced by trans people all across the globe, but it's also an opportunity to honor and celebrate our resilience, our brilliance, and our power in the face of that discrimination. You might hear from some people that trans people existing is a new phenomenon. When questions are raised about whether we deserve to use the bathroom or whether we deserve access to medical care or whether trans kids should be allowed to participate in the same activities as cisgender kids, all sorts of powerful people say that these questions are new, that transgender people have suddenly appeared, and that society isn't ready for the changes that we demand. I'm here, and these folks are here to tell you that we're not new. We're here, and society had better just get ready. We've been here living our lives. We've simply been invisible, right? And Trans Day of Visibility is about rendering what has been invisible visible. And that's a complicated proposition, so we're going to dig into it. So thank you for joining us today. As always, if you have questions for one of our panelists, you can go ahead and drop those questions in the chat. If you'd like to support these broadcasts with a contribution, you can go ahead and follow the link on the screen to help make this work possible. For folks who participate by submitting a question or by making a contribution, we're gonna enter your name in a drawing to receive a free tote bag that looks like this at the end of the broadcast. It's Protect Trans Kids. These are great tote bags. So go ahead and participate, submit a question, make a contribution, help make this whole project work. So I am delighted to introduce our guests, or rather to have them introduce themselves. We're going to go through this alphabetically. So when your name comes up, I think starting with Alexxis, you are going to just share a sentence or two about yourself, and you're gonna get us started today with a question about pride. So pride's a big deal in our community, right? We all talk a lot about pride all the time. So I'd love for you to share something that has happened recently. What is the last thing that you did that you're proud of, made you feel proud? So starting with Alexxis. Kick us off.
Hi, everyone, and glad everybody decided to join us today. I am Alexxis Robinson Woods. I use she and they pronouns. The last thing that I did that I feel really proud about is approximately 6 weeks ago, I started my role as executive director at Call to Safety, and I'm pretty proud about that. These are wonderful people I get to work with, and I'm excited about what we get to do, and I'm excited existing as I am in this role.
Thanks so much, Alexxis. Our next person here is Brenda.
Hi, thanks. My name is Brenda McComb. I use she, her pronouns. I think I transitioned, came out to everyone about almost 20 years ago. So your point about having been here for a while, yeah, I've been here for a while and out. The thing that I was most proud of recently, as I'm currently working on a project, and the group working on the project with me needed a little bio of me, and so they had all my professional stuff in the bio, which is kind of old and boring. So I inserted a little phrase in there that made it clear that I was trans. And the woman who was working on the bio with me wrote to me right after I sent that bio to her, and said, "Thank you. Thank you for being out. Thank you for being someone that that she can relate to." So it just really warmed my heart, and felt really good about that.
Talk about visibility and the importance of visibility. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Also, gosh, I would love to like dig into a conversation about all the ins and outs of putting your gender in your bio and
Yes.
coming out in a job application and all of that stuff that we all get to think about all the time, right?
Right.
Thanks, Brenda. So our third speaker today is Kyran. I'd love to have you introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyran, but you can refer to me as the wonderful Uncle Kai because I am everybody's favorite uncle. I use he, him, his pronouns. And the thing that I am most proud of as we talk about visibility as well, I just recently celebrated my 10th birthday from coming out as trans and transitioning. And that was like, I don't know, the biggest milestone I could ever experience in a recent decade. I also had a broken leg at the time, so it was quite a time, but I'm also walking now, so that's the second thing I'm proud of. So, that's all I got. I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you.
Recovery from an injury like that is nothing to shake a stick at, so definitely something worth being proud of. Also, 10 years surviving, being trans, being you. I love it. And our final speaker is Malo. Malo, who are you?
Talofalava, Malo Lele, Alo Ingo, Manumalo, Alexxis, Owawo Lefatane Samoa. Thank you for the opportunity, bro, Basic Rights Oregon, to be with this amazing panel today. I just greeted you in my Pacifica indigenous languages of Samoan and Tongan. I am Manumalo Alexxis. I go by Malo for short, and I use they, he pronouns, and I identify as Fa'atane, which means in the manner of a man in Samoan, and also Cutie Pie, which means queer and trans Pacific Islander. I am the co-chair for UTOPIA PDX, and we provide sacred spaces to strengthen the minds and bodies of cutie pies, queer and trans Pacific Islanders, through community organizing, political engagement, and cultural stewardship. So one recent thing that I'm very proud of is that UTOPIA is leading this critical work in response to COVID-19 that has devastated the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community here in Oregon. And we just vaccinated like 410 of our community elders this past Saturday. 410 got their second dose of Moderna. And it just brings a lot of relief that we're able to do this, but then also to be leading this work with our sibling Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander organizations. Thank you.
That's such powerful work. Thank you so much for being here. I'll finish up. I'm Kyran, like I already said. I've given a little intro of who I am and what I do. Something that I did recently that I'm proud of. I went on a 15-mile hike about a week ago, which 10 years ago, Kyran would have actually just laughed at you if you had suggested that I might one day go on a 15-mile hike. So I feel really proud of my body for lifting me through that experience. So something I feel really proud of recently. All right, let's dig into questions. We've already got some audience questions that I'm excited to jump into, but I wanna start with a couple that are really specific to help folks get to know you all, who you are, and more about the work that you've been doing in our community. So I want to start. I think I'll start with Malo since you just spoke. So you have said that, you created Utopia PDX. This is a big need that you saw in our community, in your community specifically, because queer and trans Pacific Islanders, which Cutie Pie is like the best acronym that exists, period. But didn't see themselves reflected in the API community or in the LGBTQ community. So we hear a lot of communities have this sort of intersecting, not seeing themselves reflected in either of their the communities surrounding their identities. So given sort of that lack of reflection in those communities and the need to create an organization like Utopia, what does Trans Day of Visibility mean for you?
Wow, that's a great question, Kyran. I think for all the fa'atane or fa'afafine in the manner of a woman in Samoan, mahu wahine, mahu kane, takatapui, tangata tapu, leiti, that exists from Oceania and here on the US continent. Organizations like Utopia, because we have one in Washington, we have Utopia Washington, we have Utopia Las Vegas, Utopia Alaska, our originating chapter, Utopia San Francisco, Los Angeles, LA, Montana. Everywhere that there is a Cutie Pie presence, Utopia is filling in that gap of that intersectional identity. It's beyond sexual orientation and gender identity. There's a cultural piece that unites us as well. When we think about Transgender Day of Visibility, it really is putting yourself out there, that risk and that sacrifice of your own personal life to lead this work. And I didn't see that, for Fa'atane, for me, when I was growing up, but I saw a lot of strong fa'afafine that really inspired me to live my truth and to go on my journey of evolving and transforming. So I think when we're in a safe place in our life, that we can advocate not only for ourselves, but for our vulnerable community members, it means a lot and it goes a long way because people can see themselves reflected in us.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful. I think that maybe the wider world thinks about visibility as being helpful for advancing rights because it makes us more intelligible to people who don't have experiences like us. But I think less attention is given to this like powerful experience of seeing yourself, right? Of the people, of little kids who are like us, who are like you, who haven't gotten to see examples of themselves in the world and in their communities, getting to actually like see an image or a vision for what life could look like, right? Who is someone I could look up to, I could emulate, I could strive to be like. Such a powerful shift in our society and culture that it's really meaningful to get to see. Kyran, so you sort of talking to how things have changed, right? Things have been shifting over the last decade. It's your 10-year birthday. You're just a little older than me. You've got a couple years on me. We're like at the age we should be like squabbling over Game Boys. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Trans Day of Visibility itself is only 12 years old, right? So I don't even know if it had gained enough traction that when you came out, it was something that you were seeing in your periphery or in your world. What's it been like to observe visibility and representation for trans people grow in the past 10 years?
It's honestly been a beautiful thing, but also just maintaining the beauty of that has been challenging, because we're still seeing like violence being taken out towards us just on us being the visibly beautiful people that we are and the chance that we deserve at this life, you know what I mean? But I guess to fight that backlash, all we can do is like continue to be our truest selves and allow our visibility to show, and I think about that a lot personally as I've transitioned because I'm really like understanding what it means to be a Black trans man, be a Black man, and be a Black trans person all in one. And realizing like it's not only my resilience that came through, but also the love of the people in my chosen family around me that helped me continue to be that resilient person and be that, you know, badass uncle that everybody needs. So it's so many things, but I just think about how beautiful it is as I'm looking at the sunshine at right now and looking at everybody else on the panel. And I'm like, wow, we're doing a damn thing and we should be fucking proud. Sorry for swearing, but I'm just, you know, you should really be proud. And everybody who's watching this and even our allies should be very proud to like, you know, even be associated with us because we cool, you know?
Yes to that. Oh my gosh. All these like people in our lives that are just so lucky to get to know such brilliant, resilient, powerful people who survive in the face of a world that thinks that we shouldn't exist. Like we show up and we thrive and we win, and our communities and our loved ones get to just like sit in that, which is so cool. So Brenda, you transitioned at a time when visibility for trans folks wasn't nearly as robust as it is now. And I'm wondering if you want to share sort of what that was like, what your experience of coming out was like, maybe for younger trans folks who are watching this who didn't transition when you did, sort of specific hurdles you faced that you think maybe don't show up as much anymore or look a little different now.
Yeah, thank you for that. So just to put it into perspective, I'm 68 years old. So I've been around the sun a few times. And when I was growing up, there was no model like, you know, we have here today. This panel is just awesome. It's just amazing. And so great that Bro is putting this on for all the trans folks that have come out, but especially for all of the ones who have not yet, and need to understand that there are people like us who are out, are proud, and have been successful. Not without some challenges, but yes, we're here. So what was it like? You know, when I first came out at the University of Massachusetts almost 20 years ago, I would describe it as euphoria punctuated by terror. It was just I had all these mixed emotions, and the terror was how people would perceive me and how they would react to me. My two big concerns were just simply being accepted in a profession at that time that was largely cisgender, straight, white, male. And I would say most of the people who I interacted with were understanding, or tried to be understanding. They were empathetic, not all, and that made for some awkward moments. So that was one concern. The other concern was my family. I have two sons, and I was very concerned about them and their welfare by me being so public. But I was public, and I have been from the very beginning. So that's, you know, at that time, there was not a Transgender Day of Visibility. There was a support group that I attended, and it was a fairly large group that met once a month in secret. So that was pretty telling, actually, that we were not out. And I just want to come back to all the people who are not out yet. I understand. I was 50 years old when I came out. For 5 decades, I was afraid to come out. So for all of those people who haven't come out yet, you know, I understand. It is difficult. But there are folks like us who are willing to be with you and help you if you want that help.
Thank you for bringing that home, both the sort of image of how things have shifted over time, of course, and then the reality that in a lot of places in this country and many other countries, it's people aren't living the lives that we're describing here, where they're seeing themselves reflected in their communities, right? Yeah, did you have something to add?
Just if I could just follow up, yeah, I give you an example. I have a colleague that I've worked with for well, about 15 years, and she also just came out at the age of 50 and shared many of the same concerns. So there are people of all ages, all walks of life. You know, we are diverse in other identities as we are similar in our transness. But the difficulty in coming out varies from person to person, and it can be extremely difficult for some people, especially people who have grown up in a world which has a lot of social constraints placed on them. People who live in rural areas, who live in a community where it would be very difficult. So I just want to offer that up as empathy and support for those people who are still struggling with coming out.
You're muted, Kyran.
You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you. What I was saying was that some of the stickiness and the difficulty of the conversation around rendering the invisible visible, there are people for whom that invisibility, right, that is like a cloak, right? Not to make a Harry Potter reference, I'm not here for that. But that ability to slide under the radar, to walk through the world and not have people immediately know that you're trans, right? Or not have people who have seen tons of trans people in their lives and might look at you and make assumptions about you, right? That invisibility, it has hurt us and it has made it possible to survive, I think, for many people, particularly throughout our history. And I want to ask like one more question before diving into the kind of heavier side of that, maybe, but I feel like that's like a little bit of a preview there. Alexxis, so you have helped organize the City of Portland's Trans Day of Visibility event the past few years, which shout out, there's an event happening tomorrow for Transgender Day of Visibility hosted by the City of Portland. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end today, but what does Trans Day of Visibility mean for you? What's it been like to be engaged in visibility work specifically with the city? And I know you've been engaged with a number of other organizations and projects. So,
yeah, it's been interesting. It's actually been really cool to exist as me and interact in these different places and not have to worry about that cloak, so to speak, the need for it anymore, and being able to walk through the door. I love the fact that my profile, my resume, my jobs all start out with transgender woman of color, period. I have no problem with that being, and I need folks to know that right out of the chute. It is exciting working in this aspect, but I see it two ways. It's great, but not great. And what I mean by not great is the fact that we have to have a day specifically for this means that there's a problem. That means that folks aren't being seen, needs aren't getting met, and other things are going on. So what do we have to do? We have to actually make a day to recognize it. That to me is problematic because we're here. And clearly we've been here quite a while. And I remember thinking those same things. I have 4 sons trying to navigate that in this world, and particularly as a trans woman of color and what that expects and the social stigma attached to my identity, not me as a person, but my identity, and dealing with the fact that wondering about people and their fetishes and using that, and me walking into the room and just having a social media account and getting requests because somebody's got a fetish about what my identity looks like. And so that is not my visibility. But that's the other side of that, is that some people, visibility means that piece and how they treat me. But on the other end, like I said, I get to do this work. I get to work with folks here at Call to Safety who recognize me as the person that I am. You know, I go into rooms as the person that I am. And so for me, it's exciting. I don't know that I could have gone through transition when I was a kid. I was 40 when I started. So it's like if I'd have had to do it in Portland as a Black youth, I don't know if I'd have survived it. And we are all here to try to help those that we weren't able to, so they could start when feeling whole, feeling like their best selves much sooner than we were allowed to. And I say allowed, meaning because we weren't allowed. And there are currently, 200 plus bills across the country talking about allowed as a youth to transition. 3 states that put in ones that say you can't, and more to follow. So yeah, we need these, but we need them almost every day because our visibility is causing people who care nothing about us as people, but they want to set a law restricting what we do. None of these people probably met a trans person in their life, but they want to restrict how a parent works with their child. So yeah, we got a whole lot of work to do. I didn't mean to go that deep early on, but that's where my head is today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where our audience's head is today as well. I'm sure other folks have heard about this. Many folks watching have heard about this slew of, we can call them broadly anti-transgender bills that are sweeping through legislatures across the country, mostly targeting transgender children, saying that transgender children don't deserve access to medical care, shouldn't be allowed access to medical care related to their transitions. And of course, I would say the broader sweep of bills has more to do with whether transgender children deserve to participate in sports, or whether transgender people broadly deserve to participate in sports and athletics. So we've gotten a few questions from the audience that all kind of target this question of questions around these bills. Folks who said that they've seen articles indicating that the laws being proposed and passed in other states could affect trans people all across the US. Folks are wondering, are trans people in danger here in Oregon as a result of any of that pending legislation? Are we expecting to see an impact either to Oregon law or even just culturally related to these bills? And I want to put that out there. I'm not sure what work folks in this space have been doing on that and how close folks are tracking, but I wonder about y'all's thoughts on how we might expect these bills to impact these bills that are happening in other states, not in Oregon. We don't currently have any pending legislation on these topics here in Oregon, but how these bills and this sort of new sweep of focus of visibility, trans people being extremely visible in a way that's maybe not the way we would choose, how we see that impacting our communities here in Oregon. Does anyone have some initial thoughts?
I'll try. I think the attempt to pit the danger of transgender people, in particular that there's men that are taking up space and opportunity from women, and that's the resounding, that is the nuance that is being shared, and I think we need to be more thoughtful about that conversation and what we're really talking about. When we're talking about somebody transitioning and becoming, more closely to who they feel they are, that is one aspect. But to use, like this, we're in danger, the transgender people are coming to take up opportunities, that's not a fair assessment, because you're not taking into account someone's lived experience of having to conform in order to stay safe and be accepted. Now, when we get to that point where we transition and then we're treated differently, let's have that conversation. Let's not make it about people disguising themselves, in order to get ahead, because that's not what's happening. And I think that's the danger of these types of legislation, is that the nuance is already wrong. And I feel that there needs to be more work in education, and that's exhausting. And I feel that, we're not doing a great job in this kind of model of education and in society. Like groups like Basic Rights Oregon and every state that's like Bro, or organization for each state has that responsibility, and the onus is on Bro and other organizations like Bro in each state to constantly combat that narrative. But I don't have an answer. I just think that we're constantly having to defend who we are.
My position, it's the patriarchy. I mean, that's the simplest way to put it. Because if you think about it, this narrative is new. They just change it and they place it on a different culture that's rife with inequity. I remember hearing when I was a young person, hearing them talk about the Latinx and Hispanic folks that were immigrating. And I remember hearing things like, oh, they're taking all our jobs. Oh, they're doing all this. I'm like, wait, that sounds awful familiar. It's that same narrative come back again. It's like you keep using the same threat, the same issue, and you just place it on a different group. And that's just how you forward it. No new arguments of any kind. We just take what we already know, and fear-based being the key, because it's all about fear. This isn't about knowledge. These aren't making decisions about knowing something and going after it. They're afraid of it, so let's shut it down. Let's have no portion of it. We are visible, and that is threatening to some folks, because they don't get to choose how we present. They don't get to choose what we do. They don't get to choose where we exist. And so the patriarchy has to have a control model. And that's what this is. We are doing way outside what they want us to do. And that's not going to work for these states who are literally, face it, and you can look it up to prove it later. They're mostly Republican run. All those states and legislators where these are passing, the majority of their governments are Republican run. So in Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, look at all of those that just passed laws recently. This is fear-based. This is scare. This was the same thing placed on Black people when they're taking all our jobs. Affirmative action came out, and all of a sudden it was our fault that all these things are happening. Okay? It's the same narrative over and over again.
It's like you can't make it our fault that we are trans and gifted and wonderful. Like if anything, like what if we start pushing legislation towards toxic masculinity because we need to? You know what I mean? Because like we got to shut that down. Like the type of hate, the type of fear mongering that is happening, like this is why this violence continues. This is why we're the most violent country in the world, because you're scared. You're scared of people being their best selves and actually doing it better than you, and I hope that we continue to not be scared of being ourselves against those who fear us, That's all I wanted to add. Sorry.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, the other three folks here have made some outstanding points. I can't begin to articulate what you have, so thank you for that. You raised the question, though, what are the potential impacts of us in Oregon, where we don't have that legislation, but yet it is occurring elsewhere across the country? And my response to that is social media. Our country is so polarized and has become even more polarized that political boundaries really don't mean a whole lot right now. The effects of social media perpetrating some of these just bizarre pieces of legislation is just fodder for those who want to consider us as inferior, different, needing to be fixed in some way. I don't know. I don't understand that mindset, but it becomes pervasive across state lines, across jurisdictions, across the urban-rural divide, and I think there is reason for trans people to be aware, and thank goodness for all of us and others like us who are out there willing to push back on that, because if we don't fight back, then you know, it's not going to end well for us. So we have to fight back.
Thank you all. This is a topic I'm sure we could just talk and rage about for the next 24 minutes and then some. We have lots of rage to offer, and I am I'm gonna move us forward from this topic. We can come back to it. People can keep sharing. We can bring this forward. But I think one thing I want to say is that something that I'm seeing sort of dominate even like the left, like our advocates and supporters on this topic of particularly trans kids in sports. They're trying to say, you know, this isn't a problem, right? Like the Republicans have created a problem that doesn't exist. And my reaction to that is like, don't tell me there's no problem here. There's a problem here. There's a problem when this community of people who is experiencing discrimination and oppression such that we are literally invisible, have been invisible. We have to have a visibility day to acknowledge that we exist, that this community is being scapegoated again. Right, that the Republicans have trumped up, that the right has trumped up some way to attack us again, and that we just accept that this keeps happening to our community, and we just have to keep fighting it, right? We don't get to just live our lives. That's the problem here. There is a problem that exists, and we have work to do. Like I said, we can keep talking and raging about this. I'm going to keep asking other questions. If you want to come back to talking about anti-trans legislation, you be my guest. This is your panel. So we've gotten some questions specifically for Kyran and Alexxis. I had some written down. Folks are wanting to get perspective and thought around what Transgender Day of Visibility means in a world where Black trans people, and particularly Black trans women, are the targets of violence and oppression in a very real way in this community, in the way that others in this community are not. I don't want to push you to be traumatized this afternoon. I want to invite you to share whatever feels like the right thing to share on this topic at this moment. And if that's nothing, I support you wholeheartedly. So start with Alexxis.
Yeah, it's what I was talking about earlier. It's a good thing and not so good thing. The visibility for Black trans women has been stigmatized from long as you can remember. It's all about sexuality and that sort of thing instead of just as a human, which is part of this. I saw one of the current bills going through Oregon that my understanding of Basic Rights Oregon is also involved with this, the panic defense for murder. That being that's as clear as any example of what we have to go through as trans people of color, particularly trans women of color. It was interesting. I always felt better if people knew I was trans, because then I didn't have to worry about that. I didn't have to worry about somebody panicking and reacting later. So that meant exposing myself in a way that otherwise I wouldn't, because the alternative could be worse. I'm okay with seeing hate come at me when I recognize it, because I deal with it. I've been dealing with it since the day I could actually think and process thought. 4 years old is the first time I remember being called the N-word. So I've been dealing with this my entire life. This isn't new. The difference being now is the different treatment based on that, and feeling like I have to somehow change the narrative. I didn't start the narrative, so why the hell do I have to change it for all trans women of color? We represent every aspect of this country, and we shouldn't have to be put in a certain box for you to recognize that we are not a problem, we are not a fetish, we are not an issue. And so mine personal is, I am fortunate that the background that I had, that I lived for 40 years, prepared me to be able to move into something and not have to take so many steps back. But I got fired, I was out of work, I had to rebuild this. And I'm proud of the fact that I did not stop, and I refuse to even now. And I think that is the narrative for Black trans women that I think exists. We're not done, we're not stopping, we're gonna keep moving. And that's the life. But that means a certain level of fear that I live with every day because my existence is a threat to somebody.
I got so touched by what Alexxis said. I was just so wrapped up. Kyran, can you repeat your question again? Because that was just so dope.
Yeah, what did I even ask? Thank you.
Thank you so
that's
much
it.
for
Show's
that.
over. I just want to create a space, an invitation for you to share some of your perspective and thoughts on particularly Black trans visibility in the landscape of violence against Black people, violence against trans people, whatever you feel moved and empowered and excited to share.
Okay. Well, I have so many thoughts, but I guess speaking to my own identity as a Black trans man, I want to say that trans men of color are invisible. We kind of like, as we continue our transition, we fall under the cloak of masculinity, which is the bigger problem. And that is the bigger, the bigger fight that we continue to have to fight, coming from our upbringing as like, AFAB people to who we are today, and that's what I think about in my own upbringing as like being raised as a Black woman and transitioning into a Black man, and how silenced I was then. And then coming into an identity that is like different, but like masculinity is silencing the voice that needs to come through to combat masculinity, And I really make it a point to speak to my peers of trans masculinity or trans masculine experience to challenge masculinity, because we have the opportunity to be the better man, if you will. If you choose to identify as such, you can be that. And that's what I try to be in my own representation every day. Like I'm going to be the one I'll talk that good shit to you and break it down, and I'll have you looking stupid at the end of the day. Okay. And that's what I do at my job, at the bar, no matter if you want to go for it, we could go toe to toe. It's fine. I'm not afraid of you. And that's one thing that I guess like that's the one privilege I have in masculinity. Like I'm what you expect of me, I will be that. But I will also be that from a loving place. I will be that from an empathetic place. I will be that from a compassionate place that supports my community. And what I think of trans masculinity, we need to be there to support our trans women of color that are going through this. But also, it's like on the inverse, as we're still trying to find the boom in our voice, if you will, it's like, please give us some grace in trying to find that, because growing up as a little girl, a lot of people told me to shut the hell up. And I'm like, no, but, but, like, imagine a lot of people experiencing that and having struggles to find that in their current identity. So, I can speak a lot about it as well, because like also being both Black and trans, we're fighting like a two-pronged battle within our own community. Black people don't want us to be trans. They're busy hurting us at the George Floyd rallies. You got time to stomp on my sister for identifying as herself when we're trying to fight the bigger battle of these white people stopping us for decades, for centuries. But you got time for that? What are we doing? So, I'm getting hype. I'm sorry. Let me mute myself.
My gosh, please never mute yourself. Thank you. Thank you for the gift of expression and thought and care. And you said both of you just said like 15 powerful things in 20 seconds. And I'm like going to like go back to this recording and cut that clip out and just like replay it for myself 15 times. That's the thing that I need to do, because I feel like I need to like take more time to process and think about all of the gifts that you just gave us. So, yeah, Kyran.
I also wanted to add, I know much of that conversation was around the binary, but I also want to include the non-binary Black trans community within that as well. And just like, just gender fluidity and gender variance is like such a big thing. And it's also something that we as a Black community should learn in our cultural history as we try to, touch back to Africa and all of those roots. But I'm not going to give you a history lesson there, but I just want to make sure that those people are visible in that as well. I didn't mean to solely stick on the binary. Thanks.
Thanks for both speaking from your experience and what your life looks like and how you live your life, and also making sure to speak to the greater and broader nuance of all of the different ways that folks show up as trans and gender variant. I think that that's always really powerful and impactful and meaningful to bring in. So I want to, I guess, kind of continuing to think about the intersection of race and gender. Malo, the last couple weeks have been really hard in API communities, and I want to be careful to make sure that I'm mentioning that there's a distinction, of course, between Asian American communities and Pacific Islander communities, but I have to imagine that ripples of what has been happening for the last year, of course, and of course in the last couple of weeks, has been felt in the community of people you work with and serve in Utopia PDX. I want to invite you to share anything you feel moved or interested to share about that experience here in this space.
Thank you for the opportunity. Kyran, that was a very thoughtful question. The anti-Asian rhetoric, that has led to violence. I stand in solidarity with my Asian, cousins. I am Pacific Islander. I don't have that lived experience of facing the type of hate that the Asian community definitely has been experiencing. There's wonderful groups that are dealing with that, locally, having vigils and their type of protests in the past couple of weeks. APANO, the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon, has been leading some of that work. And I just feel that, just recognizing that piece. And I want to bring up what Alexxis and Kyran had mentioned also, living, in that intersectional identity. Like, I will always be Samoan, I will always be Polynesian and Pacific Islander. I don't have a choice to not claim that, but at the same time, I'm not living in this binary world that I didn't build that system. I'm navigating as carefully as I can, between my own family, my own community, and then this greater LGBTQ community. And so when I think about what's happening for Black people getting murdered by police, or Asian people being violently attacked, by people across the nation. What about the even vulnerable community within those larger communities, right? What about our transgender siblings that are having to be careful about who they are navigating in their own cultural community and then greater society? So I feel that, as we start thinking about the larger racial issues involved, that there are us, there are transgender people in each subculture of a larger culture. And are we checking in with them? Are we having the ability to listen, to provide care? And what does community care feel like in those spaces? you know, it's tough, you know, because we're in a pandemic and many of us are in survival mode. You know, some of us are lucky that we have employment, many other folks haven't. And so getting back to that blame game, that COVID-19 is the Asians' fault because another administration or former administration, you know, was calling it the China flu or the Kung flu, right? The China virus. And that's damaging, you know, because that's perpetuated throughout media, you know, and people believe it. Um, you know, why is it upon us to help shift, you know, society's, you know, mentality and attitude towards, you know, people? I mean, that's a huge lift, you know, and Alexxis mentioned it earlier, and so did Brenda. You know, we're just living, you know, we're just trying to live, and then there's all these, you know, obstacles, and you know, there needs to be a group to blame for why bad things happen in society. And if you're vulnerable, you're going to get picked on. And that's what happens. So, you know, I think we're all pretty much very aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I keep coming back to that thought that you mentioned, Brenda mentioned, Alexxis mentioned this. We didn't build this broken system. Why is this our job? Why is it our job to do all the work to fix it? Doesn't make a lot of sense. Yes. Well, Brenda, I want to come to you, but actually we need to get ourselves wrapped up. So what I would want to do is invite folks to give kind of a 1 or 2 minute closing thought. I'm going to start with Brenda because it's been the longest since you've spoken. So we're going to start with Brenda and then Kyran, then Alexxis, then Malo. So that's the order we're going to move through. Give your kind of closing thought, what you want. I think we have a lot of folks watching this. I know a lot of trans folks are watching this. So if you want to think about what you want to share, what you want folks to walk away from this thinking.
Great, thank you. Yeah, 2 things. One is first, thanks to the Bro staff and all the folks who support Bro for the work you do. It is incredibly important to so many people across the state, so thanks for that. The last thing I'd like to say, though, is that this is not a trans problem. This is not a Black problem. This is not a Asian problem. This is a white supremacy problem, white straight supremacy problem. And it is up to those folks to figure this out. We're here to fight. I'm here to fight like hell to make sure that our rights are maintained. But it is the white, cisgender, straight, whatever identities that you want to put into the majority that need to get their act together.
All of that and more. Thank you, Brenda. That is the absolute truth. I just wanted to say for myself, thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you to panelists. Thank you, Kyran. Thank you, Bro. Thank you, world, for joining in with us. The last things I just want to say is, like, for the trans people who are watching this, like, I hope you celebrate. Kick off your T-Dub celebration today and let it party on to tomorrow. And let it party on for the rest of the year. Let it party on for the rest of your life, okay? You are beautiful, you are wonderful, you are gorgeous, all of those things. Continue to be your best self. I'm going to continue to be the best uncle you ever had. And, you know, Black Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter. And call me if anybody is trying to give you some trouble. I'm serious. I got that work. Call me.
Wow, thank you for that, Kyran. And trust me, I'll be calling you. And I just want to leave folks, those folks who are newly out and those coming out, there's no book for this. There is no, I mean, even all those books you can read, understand they are not how-tos. Okay, these are not scripts to follow. These are not rules to follow. And I will say this even further for Black trans folks. None of that stuff you read will make any sense to you. So I would start what you're going on with the basics and then go from there. But when you're talking about what the steps and moving and hormones are. Just do you. Do you. And I will say this to folks who are facilitators for support groups, and particularly trans women support groups. Understand that trans women of colors already don't feel safe in those spaces. So do not make it worse, okay? Do not call them out. Do not single them out, but be ready, and that everybody's story has some importance. And if we all listen, we might find something that actually clicks with us and might help us along the way.
Just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Gratitude to Bro, Kyran, Alexxis, Brenda, and Kyran. This has just been an amazing discussion, and I wish we could just continue it. What I'd like for folks to think about with regard to Transgender Day of Visibility is just all of our wonderful transcestors, whose shoulders that we stand on today, who put in the work, like Brenda, Alexxis, and Kyran, and then those who aren't here today, right? And I feel that there is a purpose and a meaning for us to live at this time and to commune together, because we still got work to do. And for those that are still questioning, one thing that I always remind folks is it's safe for you, your current situation, for you to disclose something about yourself, as personal as this, because that is a privilege for people to know. They don't always need to know. If you're not ready to tell folks, that's your prerogative. And like Alexxis said, there is not a magical formula, that's gonna fit everyone's lived experience on when to come out, to transition. Everyone's story is unique, but I can tell you this, that you are beautiful, you are valuable. There are so many of us that you can reach out to, and we'll be happy to help you along your journey. Thank you.
You're all so powerful. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to close us out. I want to announce our raffle winner for today, who wins this wonderful Protect Trans Kids tote bag that I will send you in the mail. So please make sure we have your accurate mailing address. But the winner is Courtney Capri. So Courtney Capri will get you a tote bag in the mail. Thanks so much for participating today. There are two things in the ether that I want to tell folks about. The first is Portland, the city of Portland, is having a proclamation at Portland City Council for Transgender Day of Visibility. That is going to be tomorrow, March 31st at 2 p.m. There is a link you can go to stream it. I'm sure our wonderful communications wizard will drop that link in the chat for you. The second thing I want to mention is that Basic Rights Oregon has a leadership development cohort program for transgender people. It's called Catalyst. We are just getting our third iteration of Catalyst launched. If you're an adult, an 18 or older transgender person living somewhere in the state of Oregon, you can participate. You can apply to participate in this virtual cohort. It's like explicit, specific time with just other trans people. It's going to be all virtual, at least for the rest of 2021. I'm sure Liz will, our communications person, will drop that link to apply in the chat as well. I hope we see many, many applications from folks who watched this session here today. So with that, it is 1 o'clock. We are wrapping up. Celebrate your gender, celebrate your joy, continue to break the gender binary in the ways that feel good for you. And by that, I mean the construct of gender and its oppressive ways that it exists in our society. You all are magic. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.